Joining us today is Ryan Colker, Vice President of Innovation at the International Code Council. Ryan and I are going to discuss the topic of off-site construction and the multiple challenges to its wider spread deployment that still need to be addressed. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks so much.
Ryan, where would you say the construction industry is benefiting the most currently from prefabrication?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that are certainly being addressed through offsite construction. One is really just looking at the challenges of the building workforce. So really sort of addressing the availability of labor, which is a huge opportunity for offsite construction. I think the other piece is around supply chain and the availability of materials. So offsite really provides an opportunity to address some of those challenges as well.
Mm-hmm. On its website, ICC promotes a primer that it says can help project teams and communities unlock the potential of offsite construction. Can you provide a little bit more detail about what that primer recommends?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the challenges folks see around offsite is there's just so many different varieties or types of offsite construction. So, whether someone is looking at panelized systems, the use of pods for, say, kitchens or bathrooms, full volumetric modules, even things like tiny houses. And so there's certainly lots of sort of different challenges and confusion around what are the different types of offsite construction, how are they used, what are the different regulatory processes that apply to those. And so the primer really walks through the different varieties of offsite construction. What are the specific considerations that folks could think about if they're looking to apply, some of those strategies, and then, who do they need to talk to at the building department? Are they regulated at a state level? Can they use a sort of listed or evaluated product? And so, really hopes to sort of demystify some of those particular issues.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the challenges and solutions to achieving widespread deployment in offsite construction? One that was brought to my attention in doing some research about this was how the actual standards and other regulations are applied somewhat erratically, and so maybe you can talk a little bit about what are people are confronting right now and how to kind of circumnavigate it.
Yeah, so I mean, there's certainly a few particular challenges, but certainly the regulatory side, can be a barrier for folks. And as you mentioned, it is pretty diverse across the country how different states and localities handle offsite construction. So about 35 states sort of address the offsite construction components of projects at a state level, and so they'll have a state program that does or is responsible for the plan review and inspection of the offsite construction elements. But even within those statewide programs, there's a wide variety of different strategies. So, some cover sort of all things closed construction, which would include panelized systems. Some don't include panelized systems. And then there are various different approaches, whether the state allows third parties to do plan review and in-factory inspection. And so, so with that variety of different approaches, if we're looking to sort of advance offsite construction and capture the efficiencies that process provides, sort of dealing with different regulatory structures within different states, really sort of provides some tension, for those particular challenges. And so we worked with the Modular Building Institute to develop two new standards to hopefully sort of bring some uniformity to that process. So ICC MBI Standard 1200 really covers the design, fabrication, and assembly process, and sort of what are the key best practices that should be applied on that side. And then Standard 1205 covers the regulatory side of the process. So what are the roles and responsibilities of state agencies, local inspectors, what are the requirements for third parties, providing plan review or inspection services, and sort of working in conjunction with Standard 1200 to really provide a consistent basis. And so now we're working with jurisdictions to help get that adopted and provide some uniformity to the process. I'm pleased to.
Is this a statewide adoption? I mean, who actually approves these standards? Is it the state legislatures? Is it local municipalities? How does that work?
Yeah, so it really depends on sort of where the state is. So if the state has a statewide program, it could be adopted by the state legislature. If the statewide program has sort of regulatory authority, they can adopt it, through their sort of regulatory process. So right now, it's actually working its way through the state of Virginia. So their sort of standards board has approved it, and so it's sort of pretty close to being adopted in Virginia. I mentioned only 35 states have statewide programs. So I guess the next question is, well, what happens in the states that don't have statewide
Right, exactly.
programs? So the responsibility for offsite construction falls to the local code official, who, for multiple different reasons, often doesn't have the capacity or the capability to sort of effectively, monitor offsite construction elements. So, if you think about a factory could be, hundreds or thousands of miles away outside of, the local jurisdiction. And so, um, often the locality and the manufacturer or the developer, can, work with a third party to provide those services, but, they don't have a sort of a set system in place. So, each project needs to sort of go through and working, with the local code official to sort of set up that process. Um, and so that was a key issue in Salt Lake City, actually, which was the first uh, adopter of the two standards. So Utah is one of those states without a statewide program. Um, Salt Lake City, like many cities, has a housing crisis, and we're looking for opportunities to get more housing in the community. At the same time, they had a requirement that all buildings entering or in the jurisdiction had to be inspected by a Salt Lake City employee. But Salt Lake City employees were not allowed to inspect projects that were being constructed outside of the jurisdiction. So there was really no way for a factory to provide product to Salt Lake City. And so they
That's
really
interesting.
yeah, so they recognized the value of the standards and really being able to set up a process um, to allow that to happen. And now we've seen significant growth in ADUs and sort of other strategies within the city. So in states without statewide programs, localities can adopt the standards as well.
Hmm. For AEC firms and manufacturers that want to get into offsite construction in a bigger way, what other resources would you recommend?
Yeah, so a few things. I mean, certainly, looking at the standards and some of the resources and tools that ICC has. I have a whole offsite web page dedicated to that and some educational resources. But I also think there's some really key sort of networking opportunities to learn from others and sort of identify what are the challenges that folks overcame. So one effort is the ABC Collaborative, um, where manufacturers, designers, and others really come together to help address some of those challenges. They've put out a bunch of resources, so I would certainly direct folks there. Um, there's opportunities through Modular Building Institute if folks are looking through for strategies around primarily volumetric, but I think
Hmm.
generally offsite as well. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think there's some real opportunities in this space. If folks are on the housing side, National Association of Home Builders has their Building Systems Council. So yeah, I mean, a wide variety of opportunities. The National Institute of Building Sciences Offsite Construction Council, has a bunch of resources available as well.
Hmm. You mentioned in our conversation before we did this interview that there are some R&D initiatives underway in both construction and renovation. Can you elaborate on those?
Yeah, so one in particular that's of interest is at the U.S. Department of Energy. So looking at opportunities, for sort of prefabricated, replicable opportunities, within the offsite construction space. So folks may be familiar with an effort out of the Netherlands and Germany called Energy Sprong, where basically They'll do a sort of laser 3D analysis of the house, identify sort of what are the opportunities for exterior insulation. They'll basically show up and sort of plop on these panels that provide additional air sealing, insulation, and those sorts of things. Doesn't really disrupt the building too much, and they can go from house to house pretty quickly. We're also seeing some additional work, through DOE and elsewhere, looking at sort of opportunities for MEP pods. So, basically, you could sort of show up with MEP in a box that's coordinated, efficient, and sort of even potentially looking at opportunities to sort of sort of marry heat pumps with water heating and those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. The commercial construction sector has embraced prefabrication on a lot of typologies, hotels, particularly, to some extent, healthcare. I'm just wondering though, how does ICC see prefabrication as a long-term trend? I mean, do you think that this has legs and it's going to be continue to grow, or does it have a point of diminishing return?
No, I mean, I think it's really an opportunity to address a lot of the challenges that the industry is facing. So, I mentioned workforce issues, which I don't think are going away.
Hmm.
I think also as we look to bring younger folks, more diverse folks into the industry, we really need opportunities to show them the new technologies and sort of new ways of delivering projects. So I think Offsite is a great way to do that. Sustainability issues, I think, really offer another area for offsite construction to thrive. Particularly as we're looking at decreasing the operational energy use, but also the materials that are used within buildings. So constructing in a factory really provides opportunities for sort of more focus on materials, reduction of waste, less spoilage, those sorts of things. I think also on the affordability and availability of housing side, I think
Yeah.
huge opportunities, around offsite. And then even if we look at things like job site safety, in many projects, you'll have sort of on-site, multiple trades, doing different things in the same space at the same time. Whereas, in a factory setting, you can be, sort of much more methodical about it. The highest you need to go is a 6-foot ladder. You have the cranes and the assistive technologies in the factory. You don't need to worry about sort of being on a job site in Minneapolis at 10 below. And so again, that attracts new entrants into the construction workforce. So I think all of those issues I think are certainly pointing to an increased use in offsite construction moving forward.
Ryan, one other thing, if somebody wanted to get a hold of your primer, what would be the best way for them to get it?
Yeah, so if you just go to iccsafe.org/offsite, you should find the primer there, along with some other resources on sort of different strategies relative to offsite, some education offerings, and a variety of different resources to help build out folks' knowledge around sort of what are the possibilities relative to offsite construction.
Ryan, thanks for taking the time to share some thoughts with us about this topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks to our audience for tuning in. This is John Caulfield from Building Design and Construction Magazine.